staff, principals, head teachers from schools, and all other interested parties, all protocols observed, you are most welcome to this symposium of teaching and learning. My name is Amy Barnica and I'm the CEO for A Partner in Education. I'm going to be your MC for this morning's webinar, where we will be looking at the impact findings from our EQUIP project, be looking at next steps and policy recommendations. Most importantly, having a question and answer session. And I ask you all to be interactive, to think and to ask any of those questions that you come up with whilst listening to the presentations. We really want this to be an interactive session. We will then give a short introduction to our next project, which is the Education for Positive Peace project, and there will be closing remarks. So that's the agenda for today. And without further ado, I would like to hand over to DG Reb to officially open this meeting. Thank you, and you're all most welcome.
Thank you for this symposium. Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office representative, UK Aid direct representative, EU delegation, the World Bank, development partners, REB staff, and most importantly, our project beneficiaries from the schools and TTCs who are joining us remotely from their district today. This is an opportunity to share learning from EQUIP projects, an innovative program that was created by APIE and supported by REB since the inception phase in 2029. This project has reached a number of in-service teachers, head teachers, TTC tutors, principals, and students who completed the interactive EQUIP course online. The EQUIP course, for those of you who haven't seen it, is a course related to the competency-based curriculum for pre-primary level in Rwanda. It features activities and videos from Rwandan classrooms to help pre-service and in-service teachers improve their teaching methodology, considering a play-based approach. The course was created by a team of APIE and REB with input from the teachers and school leaders at Mubano Academy. It is proudly made in Rwanda course. Today, we will hear from the team at APIE to see what their findings are of the course. We will also watch a video that demonstrates the impact of the project, and we'll have time for question and answer session. I encourage you all to participate actively, to ask questions, and to think critically so that we can learn from this project and assess together what should be next in supporting pre-primary education in Rwanda. I take this opportunity just to thank you and to wish you a fruitful session today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, DG Reb. As always, when we have these online courses, we're not able to applaud, but we do have the reaction function. So if you think DG Reb said some important remarks, please feel free to give him flowers, reactions, anything like this. We must remember we are here as ECE interested people, and we want it to be play-based and interactive. So please, I can see some others providing reactions. You have the reaction function at the bottom of the screen. Thank you, DG Reb. You're most welcome, and we're very happy to have you with us as our partner and giving us opening remarks today. So I would like to continue, firstly, by giving some housekeeping points. As I have said, to remind you about the reaction function, we do really want this to be an interactive webinar. So please feel free to raise your hands, either on the screen or using the reaction function that allows you to raise hands, and to make comments or to record your questions in the chat box. I'm sure after almost 2 years of doing remote learning and remote meetings, you're somehow used to the different functions that allow us to interact. Please let us keep this session as interactive as possible. I get bored of my voice very quickly, and I want to hear from others, like any good ECE teacher. And I'm reminding you all, please, to keep muted so that we can listen to the people in turn and take turns to be sharing our ideas. Feel free to put your video on if you have enough bandwidth to do so. If not, you're very welcome just to be listening in. And our colleague Emily Munyankazi will be monitoring the chat and letting us know if anything comes up. So today we have all of the team of APIE Rwanda here with us. Myself, the CEO, Irene, the Executive Director of Education, Emily, the Project Officer, Segalen, our ICT and Data Officer, and Chandra, our External M&E Consultant. So without further ado, I'm going to report on our impact findings, and I hope you will find it interesting and enjoyable. So, the rationale, what was the need for EQUIP? As you know, the early childhood education CBC curriculum was introduced in 2016, which focused on play-based methodology. APIE found that there was a lack of models of best practice in ECE, that also in the classroom, there were many unqualified teachers and under-resourced classrooms. And there was also a lack of knowledge for how to create low-cost and no-cost learning resources. So what did we do? How did we respond to these needs? APIE created an online course that features 6 modules based on the 6 learning areas of the curriculum, and 1 module based on the early childhood education minimum standards. This course was created in Kinyarwanda to maximize the understanding of teachers, considering that Kinyarwanda is the language of instruction in pre-primary in Rwanda. And it was also created in partnership with Umubano Academy, where we took examples of play-based learning and created photos and videos demonstrating the best practice in the local context. In our second phase of EQUIP, we also created some lesson planning guides, which I'm showing if you can still see me on the screen, to provide supplementary ideas for teachers in the classroom. And throughout the course, we provided ongoing support to the beneficiaries. So the objectives of EQUIP were to develop an accessible, high-quality training program with online modules for ECE service providers in Rwanda, to increase the knowledge, skills, and competence of these service providers across 17 districts in Rwanda, and to increase the recognition of the importance of ECE in Rwanda. So we had 3 overarching objectives for our project. And here is the timeline for the EQUIP project. We had 2 phases of EQUIP. We launched in January 2019 and developed the course between February and August 2019, conducting a pilot in 10 schools in Kichikiri district and at Umubano Academy. We then went through the process of validation with REB between September and December 2019, which particularly involved a very specific focus on the use of Kinyarwanda, ensuring that we had the correct Kinyarwanda in keeping with the new Kinyarwanda policy that was produced at that time. The course was then completed in phase 1 by 174 beneficiaries between January and December 2020. And those beneficiaries were head teachers and pre-primary teachers. In EQUIP phase 2, we wanted to introduce the course also at TTC level. So we piloted it in February 2021. And then the course, after edits to make it compatible for the TTCs, was completed by 1,651 beneficiaries between March and December in 2021. The project ended just 1 month ago, and now we are in the period of evaluation between now and March 2022. And I'm sure by the end of this presentation, you'll be wondering what happens next, because it's a good course and it has good impact. So we will be looking at that before the end of today's presentation. Our key partners, as already mentioned, we worked very closely with the Rwanda Education Board, and particularly with their early childhood specialists from the Single Project Implementation Unit and from the Teacher Development Department to provide a course that was relevant and well matching to the curriculum. In phase 1, we worked with 232 schools, which was all of the pre-primary schools in Nyabihu and Ramagana districts. And then in phase 2, we worked with the 16 teacher training colleges and 52 model schools across 16 districts. And as Ramagana has a TTC in that district, it meant that we worked with a total of 17 districts over the 2 phases of the project. Our key stakeholders are the TTC principals and tutors, the head teachers in the schools, and the ECE teachers and TTC students who teach in those schools. And our ultimate beneficiaries are, of course, the nursery learners. Looking at the EQUIP project cycle, for beneficiaries taking part in our project, they would first read the course and access it online and complete interactive course activities. For example, true and false activities, drag and drop activities, did you know activities. They would also watch course videos, and there was at least one video in each unit of the course which demonstrated the ideas that were being introduced within that learning area and gave examples of activities to do with children inside and outside the classroom, as well as an interview with a Kinyarwanda speaking teacher to explain what they were doing and how it is successful in the classroom. Beneficiaries of the course are then expected to apply the learning inside their classroom, to evaluate the learning, to assess how they think they have changed their knowledge and their ability as a result of the course, and to contribute to the community of practice WhatsApp groups. So as part of the project, APIE held WhatsApp communities of practice online through the WhatsApp platform to encourage teachers and school leaders to share their learning, to motivate each other, and to ask any questions as they came up. We also provided a help desk for any questions from beneficiaries at any time. So how did we measure the impact of this project? We had a blended approach with remote impact measurement and on-site impact measurement. And some of this, of course, was dictated by COVID. We were not able to get into the schools as often as we wanted to, so we had to do more remote measures, but where possible, we did go on site to do in-person visits. So the remote measurement tools included pre and post course evaluations through Google format. And that was done for all beneficiary groups, and it included multiple choice questions. We did pre and post course tests using Google Form, which allowed us to assess the knowledge of ECE curriculum knowledge before and after the EQUIP intervention. We received data from the TTCs on the teaching practice before and after the EQUIP intervention, which allowed us to have a large data how they were performing before EQUIP and then after EQUIP to again assess the value added from our intervention. We looked at WhatsApp community of practice contributions, and we also conducted phone calls, regular check-ins to see how beneficiaries were doing, and also responding to help desk requests when beneficiaries needed some extra support. On site, we conducted lesson observations of teachers and students. We did classroom environment observations, And we developed these checklists that allowed us to assess the main criteria that we would expect to see inside an ECE classroom based on the CBC and also international best practice. We held focus group discussions with head teachers and teachers, interviews with head teachers, TTC principals, TTC tutors, and TTC students. And one of my favorite things is that we collected a lot of photos and videos demonstrating what was going on in the classroom and evidencing our impact. So APIE has 3 guiding principles for impact measurement. The first is to consider different sources of data. So that means on-site mixed with remote, the M&E visits, self-reporting, and assessment results to measure the knowledge acquisition. We also involved stakeholders in the impact assessment. So it's not just a team of APIE staff coming in, making judgments and assessments and going out. We involve the stakeholders in that process, the head teachers, the TTC tutors and principals, all of the leadership teams in the school level, to ensure that they understand how we are assessing impact and that they learn how to assess impact themselves. So they also get a better understanding of what quality education looks like in the pre-primary classroom. And finally, we compare mass data to small samples. So if we say that we can show that 86% of our beneficiaries have made improvement in their knowledge after doing the course, we also want to say, and when we went into the school and observed these teachers, we can see improved practices. So we compare that mass data and we back it up with small samples of qualitative data. So when we look at the beneficiaries, as we've already said, we reached over 2,000 people who engaged with this course. And that's made up of 1,825 who completed the course, which is 1,364 TTC students, 277 ECE teachers, 124 TTC tutors, and 60 head teachers. Now, the 60 head teachers is an important figure, and I'll come back to that one later. We also had 797 beneficiaries who partially completed the course. This means that perhaps they engaged in 1 or 2 units, but didn't complete the whole course. Or they may have studied the whole course, but they did not take the pre-test and post-test. Some of this took place during COVID, where we were not able to sufficiently support our beneficiaries to make sure they did the course. A lot of this engagement with Equip was reliant upon beneficiaries being motivated themselves and wanting to take the course. So I think it's very impressive that 1,825 beneficiaries did that. And it's not surprising that we had some who engaged but did not complete the course. And I hope that over time, we will re-engage those beneficiaries and see them also complete the course. Looking at the beneficiary demographics, our beneficiary group is made up of 66% females and 34% males. This is representative of the demographic of teachers and students who are interested in the pre-primary field. So those of you who are interested in gender responsive teaching and that kind of thing, it's very important for young children to have male role models. And as we can see here, there is a mismatch, it's not a 50-50 split. So this perhaps could be another advocacy point to try to encourage more male TTC students to take the ECLPE option and for more men to enter the ECE profession. Of course, this is not without its challenges, and some of these will be looked at later. So the demographics, we have 76% who self-reported as living in extreme poverty, earning between $30 to $60 a month. Not surprising when you consider the number of ECE teachers who are on the payroll and the level of pay that is offered to that group. 5% report being an orphan, 5% identify as a refugee, and 3% identify as living with a disability. I wanted to touch quickly on the value for money. APIE, as many of you know, is a small organization, and we are able to produce big impact with relatively small pots of money. So the entire Equip project, phase 1 and phase 2, was less than 150,000 British pounds. And from that money, just around 100,000 pounds was provided by the UK Aid Direct. And with that money, we were able to reach 2,622 beneficiaries, which has impacted already 30,692 children. And for as long as those beneficiaries remain in the early childhood classrooms, we will continue to impact more children year after year. So I hope you will agree, it demonstrates excellent value for money. Let's go on to look at the outcomes now. So we have 5 broad themes that we have used to categorize the outcomes that we found in our project. And we're going to go through each of these 5 themes in the following slides. So curricular knowledge. We found that 72% of all of our beneficiaries demonstrated improved knowledge of the ECE curriculum. 95% of the teachers were providing lessons that are now linked to the CBC curriculum based on observations done by their head teachers. And 86% of the students in the TTCs improved their teaching practice after equip. And the average amount of improvement was 30%. So when we compared the cohort before equip, who did not access the equip course, to those who did have access to the equip course, the change in their teaching practice improved by 30%. And this was based on a sample size of 871 TTC students. When we look at the play-based teaching practices, 80% of the ECE teacher lessons include play-based learning. 84% of ECE teachers are using teaching aids that are both safe and local. And we saw in the video the very nice homemade radio that one TTC student made as an example of that. 91% of ECE teachers have learners use their 4 senses to learn a concept. So thinking about looking at things, hearing things, smelling things, tasting things, and touching things. As we've said 4 and not 5, I'm not sure which one we didn't include. Perhaps tasting, we wouldn't taste too many things in the classroom, but it's always good to do that too. And we found that 42% improvement in quality of the lessons delivered post-equip. So that means based on the lesson observation format that APIE came up with, which assessed teachers in 17 different areas. When we looked at those back in 2019, compared to those that we just visited now, we found that there is a 42% improvement in the quality of the lessons, that they are meeting more of those indicators and providing much better quality lessons than they were at the beginning of the intervention. Next, we're going to look at inclusive teaching practices. We found that 88% of the ECE teachers provide differentiated activities, that 84% of the teachers include every child in their lessons, making consideration for every child in the room and how they can be included. Of course, this is no easy thing when you consider the class sizes. So 84% is a very high percentage to see on this marker. And 69% of the teachers reduced teacher talk time. So this was based on the head teacher's observations. And again, we're going to come back to this at the end, where we look at how many head teachers actually completed the equip course. Looking at positive behavior management next. So we found that 89% of the teachers encourage learners through verbal and non-verbal means. 79% of the teachers praise learners, and 93% increased their routine interaction with parents. So the idea of parental engagement was a big aspect of the equip course and something we kept coming back to throughout the course. So it's unsurprising because we put emphasis on this, but it's also very encouraging to see that so many teachers changed the amount that they interacted with parents as a result of the course. We asked all of our beneficiaries how confident they felt in teaching play-based learning before and after the equip course. And we found that 65% of TTC tutors increased their confidence, 52% of ECE teachers increased their confidence, and 86% of TTC students increased their confidence, which demonstrates that the EQUIP course really helps to bring play-based learning to life for our beneficiaries and helps them to feel more confident in the classroom and therefore to be more confident when teaching children through play-based methodology. So one of our key findings, the focus of EQUIP was on supporting teachers. We encouraged head teachers to do the course, but it was not mandatory and it was not the main focus of our project. So bearing this in mind, in phase 1, only 44 out of 232 head teachers completed one module of the course. And an even smaller number, 16, completed the entire course. So like I say, there was not much emphasis on the head teachers. It was not mandatory, and APIE did not focus on getting the head teachers to complete the course. In phase 2, we put more emphasis on encouraging head teachers to complete the course, and 44 out of the 52 schools that we engaged with, the head teachers completed the course. But one of the most interesting findings is that every single head teacher who completed the course improved their knowledge of the competence-based curriculum and play-based methodology. So when we look at that pre and post-test score comparison, every single head teacher improved. So that shows that the EQUIP course is really useful for head teachers improving their knowledge of ECE. And I would argue that this is a very important need in the schools, because if head teachers understand about play-based methodology, they will be able to support their teachers. They will be able to observe their teachers and provide useful feedback on how lessons could be improved. They will walk into a classroom that is perhaps a little bit noisy and looks perhaps a little bit disruptive and more like a different learning style, where children are not seated in rows, where they're interacting, where there's noise, where there's play. And it might, to somebody who doesn't know about play-based methodology, it might look like the teacher doesn't have control of the class. It might look like the children are not learning. So for this reason, it is so important for head teachers to understand about the play-based methodology. And that is one of the key takeaways that I would like to come from this symposium. Recognition that we need to support head teachers more in this respect. And if we do that, I think we will see even better impact data with the teachers. So talking about the key impact then, 100% of our beneficiaries recommend the course to other head teachers and ECE teachers. 100% also report that the EQUIP course changed their attitude and understanding towards pre-primary education. And 86% recognize the importance of pre-primary education as a result of the course. And there's a nice quote here from one of the head teachers. Before, I used to think that the nursery section was not important. Now I think the nursery is just as important as the primary and secondary sections. I think nursery students should be treated equally, or even better than primary and secondary students. So in conclusion, our beneficiaries as a result of this course have reported increased confidence, increased knowledge in CBC and ECE methodology, improved ability in play-based learning and disciplinary methods, positive attitudinal change towards ECE, improved understanding of the importance of ECE. And then we have some policy recommendations. We would recommend as APIE to promote learner-centered approaches and to train head teachers on the importance of this in ECE, to increase access to internet at the schools and provide ICT trainers to ECE teachers. I haven't spoken that much about this during this presentation today, but EQUIP was an online course. It required teachers to access the course online and to utilize basic ICT skills. We did also ask teachers whether they found that their ICT skills had increased as a result of the course, and that was positive. I believe we also had around 30% of teachers who needed some support in order to complete the ICT course. So their internet and computer skills perhaps were not sufficient to enable them to do this independently. So this whole aspect of using remote learning and online courses is an interesting one that we need to look into more, and that APIE has some lessons on. So if others are interested in doing remote courses and would like to discuss that with us, we're very happy to do so. The next policy recommendation is to improve the outdoor learning environment. So we found when we went to the schools before and after Equip, whilst teachers were spending more time outside, the learning environment itself had not changed. So there are a number of materials that are suggested to be in the outside environment as part of the competence-based curriculum. For example, play equipment, a sand pit. And we did not find that many schools had all of the required materials listed in the CBC. So that is another policy recommendation to ensure that schools have a well-equipped learning environment, particularly in the outdoors. The next one is to promote increased teacher-parent interaction. We found that happened and that the benefits of doing so were really good. As we know, children spend a very small proportion of their life at school and a larger proportion of their childhood at home. So it's really important for parents to also understand play-based methodology, behavior management, and many of the aspects that are covered in the Equip course and in wider courses on parenting. We also recommend for training to be provided on continuous assessment, to continue focusing on how teachers can do informal assessment in the classroom, formative assessment in the classroom that helps them to plan what children need next, to identify strengths in individuals and areas of focus, looking at children with all sorts of different needs, including those with special educational needs. So we identified a real need for more support for teachers to understand how to conduct continuous assessment in the classroom, particularly bearing in mind large class sizes and how you can conduct mass assessment as well as one-to-one assessment. And then finally, to include all ECE teachers' salaries in the education budget. So we applaud the Ministry of Education for the addition of ECE teachers' salaries. I believe now we're up to around 500 teachers who are on the government payroll. And we also encourage more teachers to be included. As we know, for as long as ECE salaries are not included, ECE teachers move out of the profession as soon as they find a place in a lower primary class or in a different line of work entirely. And whilst we are supporting teachers with training, it's important to keep those teachers in the profession to see the impact of that training with more and more children to come. One thing that we found, we had one teacher who was actually given a promotion to head teacher, and they said that was because of the Equip course. So as we know, that's fantastic for that teacher, but it means that the ECE classroom is losing a very good ECE teacher. So we have to continue to advocate for including teacher salaries at ECE level in the education budget. So phase 3, what's next for APIE? This year we will be looking to host the Equip course on REB's website. It's currently on Umubano Academy's website, and we need to get that shifted across to ensure that REB can encourage participants across the country to access the course. And also we will be issuing certificates to everybody who completes the course. So even if the project funding has currently stopped, we will continue to support participants as best we can and provide them with certificates of completion. We are currently in the phase of trying to secure additional funding for phase 3. If we get that, we would want to roll out Equip to all ECE teachers in Rwanda, to embed the course in the teacher training curriculum for continuous usage, to continue to work with model schools to ensure that the teacher training college students have quality teacher practice placements. And I cannot emphasize that enough, that whole cycle of students, when they go to teaching practice, if they find a good model teacher who is demonstrating play-based methodology, they can get more out of their teaching practice and become a much better play-based ECE teacher when they graduate. So it's very important to work with that cycle of the TTC students, the schools where they go for teaching practice, the TTC tutors who will observe them in that teaching practice to ensure that they understand the good quality play-based methodology, and the head teachers in those schools who are encouraging, supporting materials to be in those classrooms and encouraging a play-based approach to learning. We would also, with additional funding, provide training for head teachers across Rwanda so that they can understand ECE and to carry out improved lesson observations so that they can support the ECE teachers. So we would be really happy to have further discussions on this with any interested parties. And if this has made you think of anything, please do get in touch after this webinar. In the basis of time, Segalen, do we have time to play the video again at this point? So I think there are many participants with us now who didn't get to see it at the beginning. We should try and do that again.
Yeah, I think we have time for that. I can.
Fantastic. Thank you. And whilst we're watching the video, please do write any questions that you have in the chat. After the video, we will have a Q&A session. We are joined today by beneficiaries from the districts, from the teacher training colleges and the schools, with all of the APIE staff team who worked on this project and others. So please do think of your questions and post them in the chat box. And I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you.
Ni amahugurwa rero mbona yagira akamaro ugereranyije nasabira n'abandi bagenzi banjye ko ayo mahugurwa bazajya bayahabwa, kuko mu byinshi bidufasha uburyo bwo kwigisha, uburyo bwo gukora imfashanyigisho, uburyo bwo gufasha abana batandukanye baba bafite ubumuga, nabonye rero ari amahugurwa afite akamaro. Murakoze. Mvuze nko ku ruhande rw'abanyeshuri twigisha byarabafashije cyane, babashije kandi kumenya ko bashobora gukora imfashanyigisho igihe bagiye kwigisha amasomo yabo bateguye, bakaba bakora imfashanyigisho bifashishije ibikoresho babona hafi yabo muri environoma, batagombye gutekereza ngo se turabigura, turakuraho ubushobozi.
Navuga ko ari amahugurwa kimfasha mu kwigisha abana mfite batoya, ni ukwikorera imfashanyigisho. Kwikorera imfashanyigisho kuko nari nabivuze mbere, ziri relevant ku bana cyangwa se ziri ku kigero cyabo kandi zidashobora kwangiza ubuzima bwabo. Iyi ni radiyo nakoze, nayikoze mu bikoresho bisanzwe by'ibikarito. Nawe urabyumva ko ibikarito ntibishobora kwangiza umwana, kandi uko mubibona iyi mfashanyigisho yatuma umwana yishimira isomo, ndetse akaba nawe wateza imbere creativity, akaba yabasha kuba yakwikorera ikintu runaka. Ubwo rero ayo mahugurwa ndayashimira nanone, ndetse aba nanashishikariza abandi nabo kuba bayafasha. Murakoze cyane.
Uyu mushinga rero watugiriye akamaro cyane cyane ko abarimu tugira mu mashuri y'incuke nako benshi baba batarize uburezi. Barahuguwe rero bamenya uko umwana yafashwa, bamenya n'uko umwana yahanwa atagombye gushyiraho igitsure, buri mwana akaba yisanga nk'umubyeyi umwarimu wize ibindi akaba atahera kuri zeru. Nifuza ko rero n'abangaba bandi tugiye kugenda tubona kugera duhabwa bagize uburezi nabo bakomeza gufashwa kugira ngo babashe
gahunda njye nayimenye ariko ntangaje abo banyeshuri bayikurikiranye muri TTC, nkabona rero uko bigishaga nkabona ari bakaba bafite tutazi, hanyuma icyo nayibonye nshobora gufasha n'umurezi utarize iby'uburezi mu mashuri segonderi akaba yabasha kwigisha rwose agatanga ibintu by'uburezi ishingiye ku uko yubatse. Imfashanyigisho zigaragaramo uburyo mwarimu ashobora gukoresha butandukanye, ko yakwigisha umwana amwigishirije mu ishuri, amwigishirije hanze, udukino. Njye nabonye nk'umuyobozi w'ishuri nanjye byarankanguye kuko hari icyo byongeye ku bumenyi bwanjye, n'igihe nagiye gusura mwarimu namuha ubwunganizi nshingiye kuri buno bumenyi akuyemo yongera kubona byinshi.
Umuyobozi w'umwana akademi ahamya ko abarimu bacu iki bungukiye byinshi mu mahugurwa yakozwe. Aha navuga n'uburyo bize bwo kwikorera imfashanyigisho bahereje ibikoresho bikoreka hafi no gushyira imikino mu masomo bigisha. Ikindi navuga bize cy'ingenzi ni uburyo bukoreshwa bigisha abana maze bakagira uruhare rufasha mu masomo kugira ngo mwarimu ari gukora byinshi mu isomo.
Nka rekomandasiyo rero mutanga bibaye byiza nk'uko Rwanda Education Board igira abapatinasi bikunze iyi gahunda bakayigira iyabo, ikajya rwose niyo yajya muri gahunda muri karikiramu za TTC abanyeshuri bakajya bavamo bayigishijwe, hanyuma kandi bakanatekereza ku barangije kwiga batarahuye n'ayo mahirwe, bikaba byashoboka ko bayibaha muri e-learning program.
Nko ku barezi bashyashya bashaka kwinjira mu mwuga wo kwigisha inshuke, nabashishikariza kwihugura bifashishije amahugurwa kuko nabonye harimo amahirwe atandukanye zazabagirira akamaro mu kudevelopa umwuga wabo kandi bakawuteza imbere.
So I hope you enjoyed the impact video and perhaps it encouraged you to think of some more questions. It's great to see some questions already being written in the chat. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Irene Connolly, APIE's Executive Director of Education, who will facilitate the question and answer session. Over to you, Irene.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Hello and welcome to everyone who's still in the call. We've got a few questions and please feel free to keep adding them into the box. So far, we have 4 questions. The first one is, how did we overcome the challenges that were faced by beneficiaries in accessing an online course? Another question regarding whether we were supplying ICT equipment, I think is connected to that. So that's the first one. The next question, what next for Equip? I think, Amy, you've answered that now. There's an element around, would other development partners be able to work with the Equip course, which you might want to elaborate on. The third question is, where did a partner in education feel that we could have benefited more from some kind of support that we didn't receive, if that's the case at all? And the final one is in terms of WhatsApp groups, the communities of practice and managing those virtually. Did they work? What were the challenges, if any? And what else could be done to set up communities of practice virtually? So the first question on the access, the online access, I'm going to ask Segwilin, our ICT and data officer, to respond to that one. And if anyone else in a partner in education have good ideas, perhaps they could also add those. So Sego, over to you for the answer to that first question.
Thank you very much. It's true that it's very challenging when it comes to ICT skills and equipment, but luckily, for most of the schools we worked with, we were lucky that they have at least one laptop or one tablet at their school. And also we asked the teachers who have like smartphones if they can use that. And those who do not have that could use the school's laptop or the tablet, because most of the school had one laptop or one tablet. So for the equipment, we did not provide any equipment, but for the ICT skills, we made sure that we had, with WhatsApp community and our phone, we made sure that everyone was welcome to ask us and to give them support, to guide them, to provide them with some videos of where to go through everything they need. And also we managed to provide them with airtime for those who did not have who have financial like problems. We could provide them with airtime. So that's how we overcame, but we think it's not easy for them because of we're still now struggling with that problem, but we try to give more support, which we think will be even important for us if we could give them trainings on ICT, at least basic ICT trainings, and if they can get, that's why the ICT, like if we can get ICT skills provide to them and the equipment, that would be much better for future Equip Phase 3. I think it will be very helpful if they get training on the ICT skills. Thank you. I don't know if I responded their question. I hope I did.
Thank you, Seglin. Thank you. That was a detailed response. Does anyone else from a partner in education want to add anything around the online learning or the online aspect of Equip? I think we can move on to the next question. Oh, great. Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, everyone. In Equip Phase 1, before
I can't hear Emily.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So I was saying that in Equip Phase 1, for us to be able to give the course to Nyabihu and Ramagana teachers, because it was before we went for the online version, we gave USB sticks to all the head teachers in Ramagana and Nyabihu. And even when we went for the online version, they still had those USB sticks to support their teachers. And that helped those who didn't have smartphones as well. Thank you.
Okay, great. That's a good point, actually, that we also tried to provide an offline response in case the online just wasn't working. So thank you, Emily, for adding that. I think the question on what next for Equip, Amy, you've already answered that. The questioner also asked about working with other development partners. And again, I think it's included in the presentation. So the next question is, how could APIE have benefited from support that was not necessarily available at the time of running the EQUIP course. So what support was not there, if any, and how would we change that in EQUIP phase 3? What further support would we be asking for? I think, Amy, you could take that question.
Yeah, thanks, Irene. I think one of the most important things to say about this is that, particularly for phase 1, we launched the EQUIP course with beneficiaries just before lockdown. So we had delivered orientation trainings to all of the head teachers in Ramagana and Nyabihu district, with the intention that they would support the teachers in the school. So if there were any issues with ICT or questions about the course, that they would actually go through it with the head teachers, and the head teachers would give them time in the school to go through the course. The reality was that 1 week after one of the district orientations, everybody was in lockdown and nobody was able to leave their house. So we had a case where all the head teachers had the USB sticks and none of the teachers could access them. And that was the point where we switched the course to being an online course. So I think the thing that we were lacking, you know, a lot of it comes from the context that we were working in that at that point, where we were not able to go out into the districts to support beneficiaries, and neither were the head teachers able to be together with the teachers. But the thing that did provide us with was extra time when teachers were at home and wanting to do something. So many of them used that time to find ways of accessing the course via their phone. And when they were allowed to move around a bit more, they found different ways of doing that. So I think we had to adapt a lot, and we managed to do that. A crystal ball might have helped us to predict what was coming in a better way, but we remained agile in our approach and were able to have good success as a result of that. Moving forwards, you know, Rwanda is so impressive with its internet provision and access, and I think as internet reaches some of the more remote schools, that will help for these sorts of programs to be successful. Of course, devices would also help, but we did find, despite not giving devices as part of this project, people were still able to find ways to access the course, so that didn't really act as a hindrance. And I think, again, going forward, working with other partners, in the last few years, there hasn't been so much emphasis on ECE, but now bigger projects are coming. And in the next couple of years, we know that there are big national projects coming. So just, again, making sure that people are aware of what's happened before. Our EQUIP course is a free open source resource. Anybody can access it. During the lockdown, Save the Children used it with some of their mentor teachers. I know Teach Rwanda have looked at it. Help a Child used it. We are really open to sharing with different organizations. And that's something that we would like to see more of. Whatever we have learned, we want to share that learning so that the next projects that come utilize that and move it forwards. So that's what I would be looking for at this stage, which is also part of the reason for this webinar. Hopefully to interest people. Some people will be out there and thinking, I've got an aspect of our program that's similar to that. Maybe we could use the course, or maybe we could learn some other things from them. Please do. We are open to learning, and we don't want what we've produced just to fall beside, because it's still very relevant and still very valid. So that's what I'll be looking at, trying to do next.
Great, thank you, Amy. The next question is around the WhatsApp communities of practice. I think, Emily, you can probably answer this question. Were those methods that we used to create virtual communities of practice effective? What challenges were there in using virtual methods to build communities of practice? And are there any other ways that a partner in education might have built the communities of practice had we been able to do so, other than the ones that we used. So how effective were the WhatsApp groups in supporting the communities of practice in EQUIP, and what challenges were there, and what other methods did we or would we have used as a partner in education to build those communities of practice?
Thank you very much, Irene, for the question. Yeah, we used the WhatsApp groups most of the times. So every time we would work with a group of people like teachers, head teachers, we would have their separate WhatsApp groups. And every time we communicate from there, because they told us, you know, in emails, people don't respond and sometimes they delay or it's not interactive like using WhatsApp. So we found that very impactful because like for nursery teachers, they could share with us like what they have started practicing in their classrooms, and other teachers would have questions on that and we would explain more. So it was more interactive on WhatsApp. I would say that that was great. And another thing we used was to be sending like SMSs, please kindly SMS us or text us on WhatsApp in case you have any questions or any challenges, and they would really do that. So one of the challenges we had was a network issue. Some of the nursery teachers we were working with did not have a good network. Others did not have smartphones, and they would use their colleagues' smartphones from schools. And another challenge was that we had limited funds for airtime. And sometimes, you know, people would be like, we need more airtime, like airtime on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, which we couldn't provide. But we managed to help them and to give them as much as we could. And they were really impressive. So I would say that that was the only challenges with the communities and practices groups. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Does anyone else want to supplement there? We're happy to move on. Thanks for answering that question, Emily. Amy, I think this one is for you. Were head teachers willing to include early childhood education in their SIP, in their skill improvement plan? Did we find that head teachers were willing to do that?
Yeah, thanks, Irene. That's a really interesting question. We didn't specifically look at school improvement plans as part of this project. It was more based on the classroom practices. So I think that would be a good element to consider for EQUIP Phase 3. So yeah, thanks for that suggestion. We'll take that on board. The head teachers were very happy to receive EQUIP and recognised the need for support and improvement in their nursery classrooms. But we didn't go so far as to look at school level policy and improvement planning in regards to that. So actually that might also be an interesting follow-up for us if we get the chance to go back into the field to look at school improvement plans and see whether it is now one of the components that's considered. So thanks for that question and recommendation for us. I can also see that the principal TTC Nyamata has raised their hand. It's great to also hear from beneficiaries. So if you don't mind, perhaps we can allow principal from Nyamata to make a comment. It seems that perhaps his audio is not working, so let's move on, and if we can support for him to be able to make his comment, that would be great. Thanks.
Yeah, we can come back to that. Thanks, Amy. Another question is around the 84% of teachers observed including inclusive practices. How did EQUIP support that to happen? And did we see inclusive practices in all aspects of teaching and learning, including assessment? So, you know, in early childhood education, in the moment observations and so on, did we see inclusion being taken into consideration in teachers' assessments? So how do we know that, or how did we see that 84% of teachers were planning and delivering inclusive lessons, and did it include assessment?
Did you want me to answer that one, Irene?
I think you could take it, and if anyone else who's out in the field has got something, for example, Emily could also maybe supplement there.
Yeah, I think it would be good. Emily can talk a little bit about the lesson observation indicators related to inclusive education. We had elements of the course that always encouraged inclusive practices and would discuss differentiation and that kind of important feature within lessons. And APIE goes on the principle that inclusive practices are good for all children, whether they have some additional needs or not. And within the lesson observations that we conducted, we were looking to see whether inclusive aspects were there. So for example, I think one measure was whether the teacher provided alternative activities to allow for students' differing abilities. So for example, whether they would sit with one group of students to provide additional support if they knew that that concept would be hard for them, whether there were different materials provided to supplement the activity for some students, whereas others would perhaps be required to do an activity in their head, that kind of thing. So whether there were differentiated outcomes. So I think we had a number of different indicators, and then the percentage that we showed in the slideshow represented the number of lessons in that final set of lesson observations where inclusive activities were included. And that also involved checking teachers' lesson plans as well. And that's using the suggested REV lesson plan, which is in our lesson planning guide. We would also have learning materials for all learners. So we would expect to see specific things included in there that would allow for children with different needs. And in the lesson plan, there's also type of special educational needs to be catered for in this lesson and the number of learners in each category. So looking at whether teachers were considering different types of learners when they were preparing for the lesson was an aspect of that as well. I'm not sure whether Emily would like to supplement that.
Sure, thanks, Emmy. Yeah, for measuring the impact on the inclusive teaching, learning and practices, we used also different categories in we had different tools on the field. So we had the lesson observations where we were observing the lessons, and we did that before we started our EQUIP course to see how is it going to improve after they've done the EQUIP course. So when they finished the EQUIP course, we went back to the field to check how was that impacted their teaching and learning methodologies they were using by looking at the environmental. So we had the environmental document to evaluate that. We also had the lesson observations, and we had feedback forms from the beneficiaries who are currently taking the course. Yeah, so all those, we measured it from the baseline data that we had, comparing it to the end line after they've taken the course. That's how we came up with 84% to show that they have improved on the inclusive teaching and learning practices. Thanks.
I think that's all of the questions that are in the chat box. Amy, thank you for answering Cleopatra's question around the methods that we use to build the communities of practice. I can see that principal, is it still the same principal that's got their hand up? If there's no one else and there are no other questions, perhaps we can ask you to continue to write your questions into the chat box. Emily is taking note of those, and then we can get back to you. And please also remember, if you joined the call slightly after 9 and you didn't put your name and your organisation or school or TTC and your email address into the chat, could you please do that so that we can reach out to you and send the materials from the webinar to you? So perhaps we can move on to our new course that we are now just getting ready to roll out more widely, which we have been working on for the past 2 years, and that's Education for Positive Peace. We have been developing it in collaboration with Umubano Academy and working very closely with Aegis Trust. It's primarily also an online course, and it was approved by REB in 2021. We piloted the course with 6 schools and 1 teacher training college, and we have now gathered their feedback and their evaluations, and we are going to be taking those back to REB imminently in order to discuss improving the course before it gets launched more widely. I think we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. So the purpose of the course, of course, is to build a conducive learning environment for everyone involved in children's education. So the learners, the teachers, school leadership, everyone, the parents, other stakeholders, so that learning can take place in a positive way that doesn't develop fear and which builds confidence and creativity and critical thinking, and all of these things that we know are essential for learning in 2022 and moving forward, so that our children are prepared for the unknown unknowns. So Education for Positive Peace is designed to support that, and it consists of 8 units with real applicable strategies that can be used in schools to bring about that conducive learning environment for everyone involved. The first unit is on behaviour management, building classroom contracts. Then we have a unit on positive behaviour management and developing an understanding of reward and consequence. We have a unit on active citizenship and engaging with parents and other stakeholders in the lives of our learners. A unit on social skills, a very interesting one on growth mindset and critical thinking, which has been very popular so far with the piloting teachers and TTC tutors. One on group work and collaboration, and then special needs and inclusion and gender. So that's what the course looks like. What is it? Well, I mean, it's school-wide, collaborative, and it's about consistency. We have 3 main concepts: well-being in schools, inclusion, and citizenship. And we are raising awareness of having the right mindset for positive learning, education for positive peace. How we behave, what we think, the skills that we need to bring about sustainable peace, and understanding what causes conflict. So that's basically what our course is premised upon. That's our philosophy in Education for Positive Peace. How do we want our partners to implement it, our beneficiaries? It's not a separate subject. It's going to be embedded in everything that we do in our schools, and primarily in our mindsets, what we think about learning and how to bring about great learning. We're going to share a set of behaviours, actions, strategies that will be woven through everything that we do in all areas of school, all areas of education. It supports learner-centred approaches, and teachers become peaceful facilitators of learners' learning. That's the aim. Also, we want our teachers to be given the tools to be able to do this. So it provides strategies and approaches and unpicks the behaviours that will lead to that kind of learning environment and the conducive mindset that we're trying to bring about. So that's it. That's something to look forward to, working with a partner in education on our Education for Positive Peace course imminently. And now I'm going to hand over to Amy again to bring our webinar to a close.
Thanks, Irene. I hope our participants here today have enjoyed hearing about the Education for Peace project and can also see some crossovers between our pre-primary work. We will continue to implement Education for Positive Peace in pre-primary, primary and secondary levels. So we won't be leaving the ECE sector at all. There will be opportunities for us to continue following up with the work of EQUIP and embedding our Education for Positive Peace at that level as well. So closing remarks. I hope you have all enjoyed the webinar and found it useful. As a result of COVID-19, we couldn't deliver the EQUIP course as initially planned, with the prolonged school closures and inability to conduct in-person visits. But we hope you will agree that the data we have collected still suggests a positive impact, and that this course has the potential to continue having a positive impact, which we hope we will be able to report on again in the future. We know that supporting early childhood education is crucial for the economic development of countries, and that this is a global target for improvement, and one that Rwanda is also aware of and trying to work on. Today, we want to recognise the early childhood education teachers and the challenging conditions that they work in, often with limited resources and access to training, and not necessarily on government payroll. We particularly want to thank those teachers who have taken part in our course, all the participants who have taken part in our course, and who have decided to take the time to upskill and to learn about play-based strategies. We also would like to thank the Rwanda Education Board for partnering with us to make this a success. Today, we tried to demonstrate what a small organisation with a big mission can do on a very small budget. And whilst this was a reflective exercise, we hope it will help us to focus on new developments and next steps. And already some of your questions and comments have encouraged me to think about those things. So I thank you all for your active participation and for doing that. We are really looking forward to what happens next. APIE are very happy to talk more about the presentation that you've seen today, about the project more widely, and about potential partnerships in the future. After this presentation, we will share our impact report with you, the presentation itself, the webinar recording, and we're very happy to answer any other questions that you perhaps feel require further explanation or that you think about following this event. So I would like to end by thanking you for your time today and wishing you a wonderful Wednesday. Thank you for being with us. Goodbye. And before leaving, if any of you haven't written your names and email addresses in the chat box, please continue to do so. Thank you for all your comments. I can see lots of appreciation in the chat box. Wishing you all a wonderful day.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks to the whole team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Amy.
Amy.
We shall
Thank you
reach
so much.
out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.